10 Nations. She's Dr. Natalia Cannon, which I'll be introducing her to have a video with us to share with her perspectives for education. So can the tech team help me to play the video of Dr. Cannon?
Reading the piece, and I invite you to ponder, what is it to be a diplomat? To be the diplomat means to speak up on the side of peace, sustainable development, and also means to try to force and build consensus. The idea of diplomacy is that dialogue actually builds a path to solutions. So I'm really happy to be here with you, albeit during the United Nations General Assembly week. There is time pressure, so thank you for coming and also for engaging on this question of education and diplomacy. Very astute, I think, especially for those of you who are embarking on the career where the skills of being able to build consensus will be useful, no matter where you land. For me, as executive director of UNFPA, which is the United Nations Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, our commitment is to make sure that every pregnancy is intended, that every child was safe, and that every young person's potential is fulfilled, especially in the developing world, because we do exist in a scenario where, whether it's conflict or climate change, the recent COVID pandemic, and so much else, the atmosphere of inequality is there for us to help. Every day, UNFPA, in the more than 150 countries where we operate, see firsthand the transformative potential of education. Yes, education, especially for young people. I imagine a 10-year-old girl, she's on the cusp of her adolescence. And you know that one of the indicators that is very reliable in terms of her life fortunes, economically, respect for her community, so much else, it really depends on her. I'm sorry to tell you that secondary education is still unattainable in so many circumstances. And why should that be? Because of controversy over her place in society. Child marriage at the age of 18, something that can derail her future, is still so prevalent across many continents on planet Earth. We also see situations where girls' education is truncated because they are undervalued. They're seen as less than the person of family next to them. Education completion tells us whether or not the girl is going to have good health, not just for herself, but also for her children. The opposite means she's going to be robbed opportunities, develop her own human capital, and to pursue the dreams. As we speak of the focus of education, it also tells us that consensus building, whether it's a human site or not, whether it's a huge science, where
week. So we really appreciate that she was able to join us even through video communications due to their very, very busy schedule. And as she was emphasizing education as a way to foster mutual understanding, sympathy, and value. And that's exactly why we're all here today. I mean, look at the room, we are full of diversity. And each country today have their own agenda on implementing education through their own diverse way. I just flew back from Saudi Arabia yesterday, last morning, and they have the whole Vision 2030, which focus on education and through diverse education so that they can have a diverse economy. And it's always like that. It's only with a mutual understanding, the value can be presented. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you that today we actually have two panels of very, I guess, ambitious young leaders from different parts of the world. Also, my HBS alum here will be presenting with us our wonderful, how their adventure is like and how they are exploring this world. And we, again, want to thank the New Empire Group, which is helping us to make this event successful and allow us to make this event a great opportunity, a great way to social and have the opportunity to learn about each other's story and how we are exploring. So let's allow me to introduce our panel host for the first panel. Actually, some people already recognize him as he has joined some reality show, Mr. Ethan. Ethan, please stand up and join me. He's also a New York University student president of STERN and a good friend who's passionate about education, bridging our friends and young leaders in entrepreneurship together. Let's give him a round of applause and introduce his panel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan, and I just graduated from NYU Stern, class of 2024. I also serve as the class president at Stern, and currently I'm a young leader for Forum for World Education. And I'm delighted to be the first young generation panel host today, and let's welcome our amazing panelists to come up. So the topic for our panel will be the power for education diplomacy, shaping future global leaders through international perspectives. As you can see, we have various different backgrounds on the stage, and I would like to introduce every single one of them. So this is Holly. She actually grew up in Beijing, China. Although I look more Chinese, but she's actually more fluent in Mandarin than me. And she's American, but she went to college in Russia. So she stands in the perfect intersection between the current three biggest superpower in the world. So now let's have Holly to introduce herself. You have a mic?
Hello. Thank you, Ethan, for the kind introduction. My name is Holly Coulter. In Chinese, it's Holly Ke. And yes, I do speak Chinese. I was born and raised in Beijing, China, but my father is American, my mother is Russian. And after graduating high school, I went to study a dual degree program between the London School of Economics and the Higher School of Economics in Moscow, Russia. And after graduation, I worked in Moscow for a year and I just moved to New York. And I'm very honored and excited to participate at the panel. Thank you.
Awesome. Now let's introduce our second panelist, Ahmed. So Ahmed is actually one of my friends from NYU Stern. He is one of the 7 breakthrough scholar at NYU Stern receiving full scholarship. And he also is one of the 2 Howard Myers scholar at NYU Stern. Currently, he is the youngest manager at American Express. And let's let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Ahmed. So I have a lot of diverse background being born in Makkah, Saudi Arabia, having ethnicity from India, spending some time in Bangladesh before moving to Miami, which was a predominantly like Hispanic and Latin American culture. And yeah, then I moved to New York City for NYU Stern because I got a full scholarship, which NYU Stern is a very diverse student body. After learning my education at NYU Stern, I am now working as a manager at American Express.
So our third panelist is Andre. So Andre is actually only, take a guess how old he is. Having 18? Any more guests?
Say
We actually have a prize if you guess it correctly. 16. He's only 16 years old, correct. So Andre is actually our youngest panelist today. Despite he's only 16-year-old, he actually has some very unique experiences to share that will really surprise you. And the reason why is because he actually grew up in a family that does business in China, an American family that does international business. So since a lot of us studies international business at different business schools, he is the epitome of international business education. So you can introduce yourself, Andre.
Yeah, growing up in a bilingual family, my family's from South America or Latin America, I should say, and thus we also have conducted a lot of business. And so I've grown up with my mom's business partners almost acting as family to me in Europe, South America, and China. And it gives a very distinct perspective on every single nation and their culture and how that centers into business and diplomacy.
Awesome, thank you. So lastly, yes. Sure. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. So lastly, to anchor our introduction, I would like to introduce Mr. Anchor Ebanks. And he is actually an entrepreneur in the biomedical sector with a very interesting background as well. So I will let you introduce yourself using this mic.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Anchor Ebanks. I'm actually from a really small rural town in Texas, and then went to undergrad at the University of Texas, also in Texas. And then from there, I actually went to a study abroad program in Paris, where my perspective was broadened, obviously. And then went to Google, worked there for a few years, ultimately went back to business school, and then dropped out of business school to start my company, which I'm out in San Francisco doing now. But super excited to be here.
Thank you, Anchor. And I would also like to thank our amazing audience because everyone in our audience has actually been pre-selected, and every single one of you guys has a very unique background story that we actually prepared in advance. So we want to actually make this panel very interactive in a way that we want to find synergies between international experience of different kind together with education experience. So you can raise your hand anytime if you have some opinion to share or if you have any questions while we're speaking. And we'd love to have a two-way conversation between the audience and the panelists. And now let's find some synergies. So I will start with a general question for all of our panelists as well as our audience if you want to ask any questions. Is that how international education experience you have had in the past has shaped you, and why is it important to you? So who want to take this one first? Okay.
I would say that my experience navigating different educational systems in China, in Russia, and the West gave me a great understanding of the power that lies in having a global perspective, because it can not only enrich your understanding of the world around us, but it can also bring down barriers For example, when I was growing up in China, I went to Chinese public schools. I had 9年义务教育. And so when I would be, I mean, thank you. And so I was fully adapted as a Chinese student. I was immersed in the language, the values, the literature, the history, the behavioral norms. But I always noticed that when I first met people, that when I went into a first new class, there was this initial hesitation of what to do with the foreigner. And then I would speak and I'd get the shock. And then I'd have a conversation with people. And I realized that the barrier would get broken. The barrier of unfamiliarity would get broken. And I'd get the comment, wait, you must be Chinese. And so I realized that by sharing this perspective, sharing a language, sharing some cultural norms, it fosters a sense of trust. And if we transform that into diplomacy, which I became very interested in later as I studied international relations. Diplomacy is about finding a compromise between two often very different sides and two often conflicting sides with different interests and different ways of demonstrating power. But when you understand the scale of value of another culture, of another society, of other people, it's easier for you to find components that you can pinpoint and use it as a starting point for a dialogue, which can then lead to problem solving. So I think that would be the biggest takeaway from my international education. And would anyone else like to share? All right.
So since you're a product of 9年义务教育, what would you say is one of the common topic that you will use when you are interacting, for example, with someone from the Chinese culture, which I believe a lot of our audience is. So what would be one thing that you would use?
Well, honestly, it'd be food. I feel like people connect with food very easily, especially in Chinese culture, or I'd ask them where they're from which region in China. And because every region in China has such a rich culture that it can make it very easy for you to connect with them once you know something about it. For example, if someone says they're from Fujian, I'm like, oh, I know about Zhuxi, I know about Da Hongbao, and that can immediately bring people closer and foster a dialogue. And that shows that you're not a complete outsider, that you're familiar with your audience. And again, it's a sign of respect, it's a sign of trust.
Well, that's fantastic. We actually, one of our ultimate belief is that there's many common languages around the world, no matter how difficult the geopolitical tension is. So let's say whether you're from the US or Russia or China, there's a lot of things, even if you don't speak the language, you can still become friends with people from the culture. It could be sports, art, and education. So that's when, as soon as she mentioned 9年义务教育, that's why a lot of people laugh, because education is actually a bridge that can bring people together. So I feel like this is a fantastic example that you just brought up. So you guys have any other experience that you want to share? Okay, Amit.
Yeah, so before NYU Stern, I was always based out of Miami. Then moving to NYU Stern, I know that NYU is very global. So I partook in the study program where I went to study University of Amsterdam. And that was my first time leaving America after getting here. I would say like that was probably the most experience that grew me as a personal growth and as a professional, because it really opened my eyes up on the world, right? About having a global mindset. Because going to University of Amsterdam, I learned how everyone's so different. Like working with different students from different countries that come there. Because a lot of people that study at the University of Amsterdam were also from Asia and Europe. So I was assigned to work with them in groups and just collaborating with them. I understood like everyone had a different perspective. Each one of our perspectives also led to us solving the problem more efficiently. Because as when we have different perspectives, we all contribute different things that allowed us to think in many different ways. And aside from like working with students in Amsterdam when I was there, I learned a lot about business there as well, because that's one of my biggest passions. And one of the things I learned about business when I was in Amsterdam was how different the culture is there, like the culture nuances, the different types of businesses that thrive there, the comparative advantages they have in different industries. And overall, that just taught me how different the world is outside of this America, and how different the perspectives and being able to understand different culture could lead to a more sustainable success in like pushing ourselves even further.
Awesome. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for the response. And anyone else want to share? Oh, okay. Oh, we can all share.
Um, so the examples that have been brought up are formal education as of this point. And obviously at the age of 16, I haven't had much chance for international formal education. But there's also a lot to be learned from interacting with people from different cultures and from seeing business conducted between two people from very different cultures. And so my mother works very closely with China, and there is and I have gotten to know many business people from China very closely, and I consider some of them like aunts to me. And so from their lives, you get to see the very distinct values and the very distinct values and foods, ways of life that occur in other nations. And yeah, it provides the ability to see past the perspective you get from being grounded within a single nation, because you don't just see a wall of a country, you see people within that country, you see lives. And yeah, it starts breaking down the barriers of nationalism.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's give it to Andrew.
Yeah, building on that point, outside of formal education, I mentioned that I grew up in a small rural town in Texas. No one leaves that town whatsoever. I was lucky to be born to an immigrant father, so I always had kind of a natural curiosity about other countries. Fast forward to today, I've now been to 40 plus countries, and as I reflect on the educational experiences I had doing that, I think the core takeaway for me, it has really been kind of the foundation of the empathy that I carry today. And then the way that I think about that empathy allows for understanding. And then when you have understanding of other people, I think it enables much stronger and much more creative problem solving to some of the world's most difficult problems.
So here comes the next question for all of us. So what would you say the significance of international education plays for today's leaders, both national leaders, political leaders, as well as student leaders, any kinds of leaders? What would you say international education, like what kind of role does it play?
So when I was doing study abroad, I thought of it like this, right? It's called universe for a reason. Uni meaning one, verse meaning a song, and we each have a part to play in the song. As the world is becoming more and more globalized, we are becoming more and more interconnected with each other. So when it comes to education, I feel like having international education experience can further your holistic understanding of the world, such as culture and having more empathy towards other people. And I feel like the biggest thing of when you enter a new country and new culture is adaptability. And if you look at any single job you apply to nowadays, they really focus on adaptability because every single company is becoming more and more globalized. They're entering new markets. So they really want you to be adaptable and be fast on your feet as well. And as being abroad is like also could develop you as a person, like having better education, diplomacy can further your communication skill sets with the people you speak to. It could further your personal growth as well. Just making sure like everything you're doing is better by business. And yeah.
Want to take it?
Yeah, I'll take it. I completely agree. I think adaptability is extremely important for leaders, young leaders, be it in business, in politics, in any sphere, because when you're exposed to a wide range of cultures, you're not just exposed to the language, you're also exposed to different case studies, different solutions, be it policy solutions, business ideas, and you have a much broader toolkit to nitpick from. And having the cultural awareness with that allows you to interact with new people and blend into new environments seamlessly and then thrive in those environments. So I think having an international education is absolutely beneficial in both the diplomatic sense and business-wise.
That's a fantastic response. You have something to say, Anchor?
Yeah, I think what I was thinking about when everyone else was speaking is just how globalized the world is, particularly from a business perspective. Even if you're not doing business globally or internationally, I'm thinking of my experience living in San Francisco. I think having an international perspective has absolutely been highly beneficial to me being able to connect with a variety of different investors, teammates, et cetera, to ultimately be able to drive better results over the long term.
Empathy and adaptability have been brought up a lot. And I think that those two are integral aspects for leaders to have. Especially empathy, because I believe that leadership shouldn't, or leadership can't just be a person trying to make the best statistical decision always, and it can't just be two number sets talking to each other. It's two people talking to each other. It's two entities that represent an entire population talking to each other. And so they need to be able to understand where each other is coming from and need to be able to see the other person or the other group as people. And by that, I think that a lot of international ordeals that currently exist can be gelled if leaders had empathy in even the opposing or the other party in an interaction.
Anchor, I have a question for you. I love your response. Thank you everyone for the response. And I know you currently work on this startup. And as a startup leader, you have to have a vision and you put together capital as well as resource to make that vision happen. So that vision is actually very important for business leaders because the aggregation of all business leaders' vision is pretty much how the private sector is going, right? So how has your own international experience or education shaped your vision towards your startup? And also you can give us a little bit more context about your startup as well.
Yeah, so my startup's Creates Health. We basically help people save money on health and wellness by making it easy to use, like a government account in the United States. In terms of how my international perspective has shaped the vision for my company, I actually think it's been pretty fundamental to the way that I think about it. In particular, if we think about the United States healthcare system, it's very, very broken in many, many different ways. And that's fixing it is a personal passion of mine. And through the variety of experiences I've had traveling at business school as well, I've made it a point to try to understand how other countries' healthcare systems work, and have kind of brought together a collection of learned experiences through those perspectives. And many of those elements are kind of the foundational elements of the vision for my company moving forward to enable people to live happier, healthier lives, and getting rid of some of the bad parts of the United States healthcare system.
Yeah, so international perspective can actually sort of open up your eyes to a lot of opportunities. So you sort of do like an arbitrage between different cultures and find inefficiencies and solutions through those arbitrage opportunities, right? So that's fantastic. And let me see a quick show of hands. How many people in our audience are currently students? You can raise your hand multiple times, by the way. How many people in our audience are currently in the private sectors, business professionals? Okay, that's quite a good number. A lot of people are actually raising their hands multiple times, student entrepreneurs. And how many people in the audience are in the education system, whether student, professionals? Oh, fantastic. Last question. How many people are in the government sector? Awesome, awesome. So we kind of have a very diverse audience. So we asked the first question about a entrepreneur. That since we're the younger generation panel, let's also ask someone who just transitioned into the private sector, about in the profession. The youngest manager at American Express. So, as everyone know, through Ahmed's self-introduction, Ahmed is a breakthrough scholar. And just give you a little more context, Breakthrough Scholar is actually a very competitive scholarship at NYU Stern, and there's only 7 of them. And he's actually receiving a full ride. And he is the only Breakthrough Scholar with an Indian American descent. And as a Breakthrough Scholar with such a unique and diverse background, how has international education influenced your understanding of diplomacy in business, especially after you joined the workforce at American Express?
So when I was in Miami, every single education I had in Miami was like 95% Hispanics and Latin American people. So when I went to NYU Stern, I knew I was going to enter a very diverse student body. I feel like just having being around different types of people from different parts of the world, right, really furthers your idea what education diplomacy is. Because not only did I learn things inside the classroom what the professor taught us, like understanding economies of different countries or like different companies in different countries, I was always learning by my peers. So my peers were coming from different countries and different parts of the world, each had different culture. So I will always learn different perspectives and different ideas that they would give me. And all those things I would learn from them will also be like transitioning to myself into classrooms when we learn about different countries and different companies. And not even growing up, being now as a professional at American Express, I feel like all this transition with the people I manage nowadays has been understanding how like how each person works from different parts of the world they are, being able to manage, understand like their problems, being more empathetic, being more cooperative with what you're trying to do, so I could be a better leader and like a better manager to them. I just feel like having like international like educational experience and this understanding what education diplomacy is can really unite us more in this more interconnected world we live in now. And yeah, and I just feel like to achieve like a very big goal, we all need to have a global mindset. And to have a global mindset, I feel like we need to work together to understand each other's perspectives and ideas so we can all achieve a sustainable goal moving forward.
Thank you, Ahmed. That's a very professional response. And I want to give everyone a little surprise. So Holly is actually an influencer on the Chinese YouTube called Bilibili. Have anybody heard about Bilibili? It's in Chinese called Bizhan. And Holly actually has like millions of views on her videos every time when she posts because she is so fluent in Mandarin Chinese that it surprised a lot of people. And since we have a celebrity right here, with a very distinct set of experience, I've actually watched her videos right before I come here. And I realized because she has this Russian descent, she grew up in China, and she's also American, a lot of your fans are encouraging you to become a politician. So I'm just curious, which side will you stand with?
I think that is precisely the question I'm avoiding for the next 10 years. But if we are to look at how how I envision future political leaders and how international education can influence future political leaders, I would say that I think we will have more empathetic and effective leaders because education, like not just my education, but international education in general is one of the greatest forms of soft power. It molds our worldview, which in turn influences how we see the world, how we interact with the world. And I would think that international leaders who have had international experience, international education, they're exposed to diverse linguistic, cultural, political, educational systems. And going back to what I mentioned before, having a broader toolkit, with this empathy, appreciation, and understanding, and as well as a broader toolkit of different case studies and solutions, they will be able to have more tailored solutions to conflicts, to solve diplomatic problems because I think we now know that one size fit all policies, they don't work long term. And we need something that's more sustainable, that focuses more on cooperation. And I think it's also vital to mention that international education should not be isolated. While private education is very prestigious, it shouldn't be that students have to go to private schools or have to have parents from different countries in order to receive an international education, in order to have a more global perspective to engage and interact with other cultures. Because if we isolate international education, we will detach it from reality. And we need people from all different backgrounds to have the ability to engage with different cultures so that they can support future international leaders to push for more cooperative, sustainable political solutions. And I hope I dodged that question successfully. And yeah.
That's actually a very diplomatic answer. And I also learned this new word recently as the world is evolving. It's called global citizen. And I think you perfectly symbolize a global citizenship, right? And also, just out of curiosity, this is a outside the box question for you. You mentioned a little bit about how being a content creator and a sort of public figure between three very distinct culture can actually promote diplomacy as well as education and form of education in some ways. But how do you plan on doing that? And what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's important to, if we're talking about a more peaceful future, it's important to not enforce people with stereotypes. Different cultures have different cultural archetypes, but when you interact with those cultures, you shouldn't come from a place of stereotypes. So with my content, I focus on everyday life. I focus on the people because my message is there might be political differences, but people are people. And culture is so much more. There's literature, there's history, there's everyday life, and people resonate with that. It's I think when it comes to education, international education, there should be an initial objective presentation of different cultures. And then when time comes with age, when people are mature enough and have a deeper understanding of the international society, then politics can be introduced. But if we're talking about primary school, middle school, there needs to be a more positive, objective representation of different cultures. And I attempt to present that in my videos.
Wow, that's fantastic. Actually, that sort of resonates with what one of our sponsors, Mr. Bentley, have talked to me about before. Is that so he's currently a business leader here in the US doing real estate development. And when I asked him about what his views on this global tension between different cultures, he talked to me about how a strong macro international relationship actually started from individual, micro, because there's nothing we can do about the macro at the moment unless we're politicians. But as business leaders, as student leaders, we can actually promote a lot of things to bring us all together as people, because we're all people eventually. And if the micro relationship became positive and people became really tied together, it actually helps the second generation. So this is actually why we're hosting this education as diplomacy panel, is to bring together the next generation of leaders, which I believe everyone in this room will be some form of leader in the current now or in the next upcoming years. So this is our goal, is to inspire more people and to have some form of intercultural dialogue to better understand each other, right? And so we would like to, since we only have about 5 minutes left, I want to open some questions to the floor. Are there any questions or comments that our audience would like to make? Anything, welcome. Yes, please. I'll hand you the mic. If you want, you can also introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm representing OSSC today, which is Overseas Student Service Corp. And I'm also a graduate from Columbia Teachers College. And I'm also a transition coach from Columbia. So all of my clients, all of my students, they are currently facing a very serious barriers in the United States, which is they are looking for local jobs as they graduate. But a lot of corporations now don't sponsor international students or international employees. So I know all of us here as global leaders, how do you guys perceive this kind of phenomenon these days? Thank you.
Thank you for this amazing question. So as the job markets are getting very tight recently, not only international students, but also American students, it's pretty hard to find a job. So let's give it back to Ahmed as the youngest manager for American Express. So what do you think about the job market? Both for international students, I assume you probably have a lot of international colleagues, right? And also, as most people know, NYU Stern is a very pre-professional school. And we also have a lot of international students. So, but it's very tough to find a job for everyone. So what are some of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so at American Express, I manage about like 25 to like 50 people around like three different countries. And yeah, I feel like getting a job right now on where you are is very difficult at the moment, but it's still possible because even though my team is very diverse, we're looking for more and more diverse people to enter our teams. And therefore, like we always are open to more perspectives and more people who are more open to adaptability, to have more open-mindedness as to working together. And yeah, I think like the job market itself right now is still open to many people. As I feel like it's as competitive for like American to get a job in America as it is for international student to get a job in America as well. But I think at the same time we're all open to having people working together, and because we're working together with different perspectives to make the teams at the company thrive. And the culture at my company is very open. We're very inclusive. So we always are open to people having different ideas and always pitching in their thoughts and stuff. And especially with the products and business we support, the more people we have from different parts of the world, the more perspectives we will have. If we're able to create like a new product or service to enter a new market, like to have somebody who like is part of the team, let's say from India, will help us understand the India market as well and the perspective of the people around in India. That's like to have someone who's in the team in America. They have a better perspective of the products that Americans are looking for, because the product or service that my company creates has to demand what the customers' wants and needs are. So I feel like the job market is competitive, but it's definitely open to having people from like having a domestic perspective as well as international perspectives. And it's just about how would you present yourself in the job application and the job interview itself. The more you're open to adaptability, the more you're open to like culture change and ambiguity, the more you're likely to land the job that you would like.
Thank you, Abe. That's an amazing response. And to address this very challenging job market, are there any other questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Alex Keo. I'm a guest of Trending China and the Chinese consulate. And I do work with the State Department and the George W. Bush Foundation for U.S.-China Relations. I'm very curious what your experience has been in representing international cultures. In my opinion, diplomacy doesn't just mean that you agree with everything that someone from another culture believes. And I'm very curious about what your experience has been being true and having integrity to the things that you hold most dear, but at the same time, in those disagreements, finding ways to be a peacemaker and strengthening your relationship despite having disagreements. So I'm very curious in what your experience has been.
All right. So anyone want to take this question? Awesome.
Right, so I think that as a high school student in the US, I've seen a lot of the perspectives of people within the US, many of whom have a very US-centric perspective. And what you tend to find nowadays, is that people see other cultures diametrically opposed to their own. And in standing for their own culture, they often desire to bash down on other cultures. But I think that if you talk personally with somebody from those cultures and really try to understand what they're saying and get through to them as a person and see them as a livelihood that exists, those barriers very fast start to break down very fast, and it no longer becomes a diametrically opposed person, but somebody who has different views, yes, but also can find a lot of commonality in which you can share your views and hopefully talk about them in a peaceful manner. And yeah, I think the key is seeing other people as humans with different opinions and not as an opposition that cannot be argued with and needs to be destroyed.
Wow, that's a very good answer from a pretty young perspective from a American student. So we have time for one last question. So okay, awesome.
Hi everyone, my name is Edison and I also graduated from NYU Stern. So currently as an entrepreneur, I'm currently a partner of a immigration consulting company. So my specialty is actually global migrations. Speaking about diplomacy and also education, because you guys all mentioned that now global leaders need to have this kind of international perspectives. They need to underwent the global educations. So my question is that, currently why Asians know the United States so well? Because, for example, we have over 300,000 Chinese students studying in the United States. But vice versa, after COVID, there are only less than 1,000 Americans studying in China. So actually to promote this kind of communication, so what motivates, let's say, Americans to pursue education in a different country, like in South America, in China, India? What motivates them to do that?
This is a perfect question for our panelists, since all of you guys have some sort of international education experience. So you want to take it, Amin, or do you want to anchor? Okay.
So I would say the main reason why Americans like to study abroad and is because to open the mindset up, because the way it works in America, you typically spend your elementary, middle, and high school in the same country. So you're already used to the same educational system. In America, I would say a lot of things here is more they teach you about applicability and how to apply the knowledge you learn. So when you first when you start looking for different opportunities in different countries, like when I was initially in college, I thought about going to study in the UK or the studying somewhere else around the world as well. It's because to be around different people in the environment. I knew education is not just about what you learn in the classroom, but it's also about the environment you're in, because you also learn from the environment around you. So I always felt if I were to go study in the UK, I did study abroad, but I didn't spend the whole university there. But I will always I will also grow as a person by the people around me and grow as a professional, as well. And having a passion I have for business, it's always great to be in different countries, in different parts of the world, so you can understand what types of businesses thrive there, what type of ideas are also prospering there as well. So when you come back to the US one day after your education, let's say in South America, or your education in the UK, you really are able to apply all the things you've learned abroad, and that could really put you that could really push you forward in the way you think compared to the people that stayed in the US the entire life with their education. So I definitely think going abroad, exploring different universities outside is the reason why people want to aim for having more global mindset, which could help them become more interconnected to what we live in now and be more open to adaptability and understanding the different cultures and nuances that surround business and success in the world right now.
That's a great response. We actually think because the world is interconnected, so a lot of times, for example, there's a technical development in one country, you want to use business to bring to another country. And in order to have those sort of business perspective, you have to study internationally. You have to do international education. This is exactly what Amin is talking about. And I want to thank everyone for the amazing questions. And I also want to thank everyone for listening to our young generation panel about education diplomacy. Thank you guys so much. And also thank you for our panelists.
Thank you very much, Ethan. Thank you. Let's give them another round of applause. They've been very enthusiastic and shared with us a lot with their experience. So now it's our wonderful social and mingle time for about 15 minutes. Please enjoy the coffee and tea behind you and meet some new people. And then next, we're gonna come back in about 15 minutes. A great panel that's going to be hosted by the Senior Director of Harvard Business School, Dr. Anika Rajan. Our director, Karnia Rajan, that she is going to share with us some established, more mature entrepreneurs, how they have been appreciating global education. So Ani will be moderating our next panel. And before that, please enjoy some coffee and tea and meet some people behind in the area. Thank you. See
Thank
in
you,
15
everyone.
minutes.
这个麦克坏了，嗡嗡的。
对，好像都说这个
是这个是好，这是坏的。
这个听起来怎么也有点问题。
这个已经很好了，欢迎就是。Hey, good job, man. Sorry, good job. Yeah. Guess you're not in now, right? You good? Good. Anybody realize it's so good? Nobody know what we're talking about. No, of course.
Okay. take your seats. Bring your drinks, take your seats, and we'll get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Ani Karajian, and I am happy to be with you here this afternoon and happy to be hosting this panel of academics and practitioners who will be answering all your questions as we look ahead, focusing on education diplomacy. We're going to talk about the role of business in global education and in workforce preparation. It's a mouthful. It's a lot of expectations we're setting, but I'm fairly confident that the folks that we have on the panel this afternoon are going to exceed all our expectations regarding anchoring us in future possibilities. I am serving on the FWE steering committee. I'm a committee member when I'm not working with Dr. Davis and the FWE committee. I am senior portfolio director at Harvard Business School, and I am working with executives. I've had many decades at the school of building bridges, expanding the footprint of Harvard Business School across many geographies, including China, India, Africa, Sub-Sahara specifically. So I love the topic that we're going to untangle together today. Building cultural bridges, building educational capacity, serving society are all really close to my heart. We've been talking a lot about diplomacy, right? We are talking a great deal about education diplomacy. What is diplomacy? As our early speaker said, it's the heart, the science, the means by which nations, groups, individuals will conduct their affairs in ways to safeguard their interests and promote their political, economic, cultural, I'm going to promote education today, relations, while maintaining peaceful, productive relationships. We heard the young panelists talk about awareness and empathy. Global citizenship is really hot topic these days. Gen Zs, it's one of the skills they need apparently to be global citizens and to act responsibly, take actions. So let's just dive in. Today's panel, to my left is Bentley Zhao. He's chairman, CEO of New Empire Group. The company was co-founded by his father in 1997. And he's second generation. He's a big FWE champion, and he's a community leader. And then we're going to dive in. I'm just going to do quick introductions and then turn over the mic. Yin Lo, he's vice chair of Wolf Research. He leads quantitative research, economics, and portfolio strategy. Top ranked #1 by Institutional Investor magazine. So get ready for all your questions. Sitting next to Ian is Noel Greensberg, successful entrepreneur, nonprofit leader, has dedicated his career to business innovation and community service. And career-wise, we're going to hear, I hope, a lot about career-wise. Next to Noel is Rosanna Hu. She's founding partner Near and New Design Research in Shanghai. She's currently just stepped into the role of chair, Department of Agriculture at UPenn. Architecture. Oh, architecture. So we've got some commonalities on the bench here. So thank you. And last but not least, Lynette Tennis, who's a faculty member at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She is focusing on juvenile justice. She's a juvenile justice education expert and is focusing on literacy, leadership, and inclusivity. So please help me welcome the 5 panelists. And I'm going to pass the mic to each of you to say just a little more about where you're sitting today and how do you think about education diplomacy? Just quick.
Okay.
Benny, we're going to start with you.
Hey, I'm Benny Zhao. So, Andy said, I'm the second generation immigrant here. So, I think my life will be big change because education from my father transferred the business to me. You know, the first generation and the second generation totally different because we got the good education from here. So, change our life, change my family business. So, this education is do a big job in my life.
All right, my name is Yan. Just a little bit about background, guys, connecting business with education. So I'm educated in two countries and two continents, and I have worked in 4 different countries in 3 continents. And currently recruiting students from multiple countries. Over my almost 30 years of a career, I have recruited, trained, and worked with probably thousands of students from many leading colleges and graduate schools. So we definitely see the connection between business education is critical to the future success in diplomacy and many other areas.
My name is Noel Ginsberg. I founded my company in 1980, over 44 years ago, in advanced manufacturing, ultimately serving markets in packaging, consumer products, industrial products, and medical consumables. When I started my business, I quickly moved to engaging with the education system, principally because I couldn't find the talent I needed to build a business and assumed that I would find the answer or the solution there. And that created a relationship that lasted to this day. I'm also what is considered somewhat of a social entrepreneur. I founded one of the founders of the I Have a Dream Foundation in Colorado, which adopted young kids from marginalized communities, typically in poverty, in the 3rd grade with the promise of a college degree sponsorship 10 years later. My wife and I sponsored 42 young people over a 10-year period, turning a 90% dropout rate to over a 90% graduation rate. Fast forward to 10 years ago, I founded CareerWise, which is now CareerWise USA, which is a youth apprenticeship model starting in high school.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation, Annie, and also Dr. Davis. I come from a 2nd generation immigrant background from Taiwan originally. And I would say I'm a testament of this diplomacy, educational diplomacy, and also that even though I come from the practice background and now I'm in education, I find myself always bridging gaps between East-West, bridging gaps between old and new, and I can explain later when we have go deeper into questions, and also bridging the gap between tradition and the future. And I think diplomacy, education, and also through practice. In practice, we are one of the first independent design firms that was established in China. We practice in the US, me and my partner, Linda Neri, and then we established one of the first independent design firms in China. And through that, we're probably also one of the first forerunners of design firm coming out of China, working out of China, but having projects globally. And I was the first female chair of architecture at Tongji University 4 years ago, and now I am serving as the chair of the department at UPenn.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lynette Tanis. I'm very happy to be here and a part of the panel. So for me, it really started, well, I guess for all of us, started with our parents or the man and woman who came together to have us. But my mother is of Indian descent. My father is of African descent. They came from Trinidad in the late 1960s. They realized very early on that in this country, although yes, the land of opportunity, the opportunities really do differ depending on what a person looked like or where a person lived. So they made the sacrifice to send my siblings and me to private schools, just believing that we would at least be exposed to a high quality education. So growing up as a child with the color skin that I have and noticed, of course, my neighborhood friends with a similar color skin, as we would talk about our schools, I realized the expectations were very different. because of where they were going to school and where I was going to school. So I committed myself as a young child to be a teacher and to provide all of my students with a high quality education. And so that's what led me into education actually 30 years ago. And it was in 2009 when I was working on my doctorate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education that I started to wonder, what are we doing for our nation's incarcerated youth, our children who are involved in our juvenile justice system, and realized then that another injustice is taking place in that our most marginalized children that we're pushing out of our schools are not receiving the high quality education that they deserve. So I'm grateful to just be a part of a family who always believed in travel, who always believed we should not judge anyone because of what they look like or where they live. And because of that, my work is, yes, teaching the graduate course that I designed, but also just helping to ensure that every child is exposed to a world-class education that all starts with a global lens and a global heart. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks all for introducing yourself. As we think about next steps, how do we bridge academia and industry through education diplomacy? And what are the things we can do to collaborate industry with academia to foster better relationships, working relationships, and to achieve our educational aspirational goals? What are the opportunities that you see for us as we look ahead? Industry and academia, opportunities to collaborate to achieve our goals. Who'd like to take this one on? No? And then.
The journey that led me to found CareerWise 10 years ago was through education diplomacy with ETH University in Switzerland, where I was invited as a part of a commission that I chaired in Denver with our largest public school district to learn about an apprenticeship model. What I didn't realize going there is that an apprenticeship could serve an entire economy in a country with about 8.6 million people. They have 140,000 to 180,000 youth apprentices starting in high school every year. And the connection between the business and the education system, both K-12 in the context of the US and higher ed, happens through that system. So the diplomacy that happened is one, an understanding of how other countries do this, and joining this institute where people from all over the world, from Asia, Africa, obviously the United States, other European countries, we learned about the Swiss system, the German system, very similar in some of the other European countries, about how business doesn't just sit on the outside of their education system, but actually are core participants. And that model, I believed, could solve many of the challenges we have in the United States. At the same time, it was interesting to me that I could learn as much from Nigeria or Costa Rica, very small countries, as I would from other states in the United States and how they approach education and workforce. So I fundamentally believe that opportunity globally is unlocked by people having skills. And those skills can't simply be delivered through our education system, that business has an important role to play. And that integration of workforce through business, government, and the education system is what I viewed in the dual education system in Switzerland. So that diplomacy, their willingness to train others has had a profound impact in the work that we're doing here in the United States.
Others?
All right, I'm happy to share a few experiences. I think it's more from how, for example, people from the business can participate in education, in designing the curriculums and so on, because I have had the luxury of giving like guest lectures and teaching at, for example, Columbia, NYU, Chicago, Yale, and a couple of other colleges. And I used to be a professor at Renmin University in China. I think this is where we're seeing the disconnects between, for example, what the industry wants versus what for example, the higher education, actually including K-12, taking, for example, machine learning, AI example, nowadays, of course, is all over the place. Everybody's saying this is sort of the next big trends. But we started this education and also, of course, applying these in, for example, in finance, in healthcare, almost over 20 years ago. At the time, most people were very suspicious. So I had the luxury of designing these curriculums and helping the various colleges and telling them, again, at the old days, for example, you call 20 years ago in finance, for example, most colleges were teaching, for example, more traditional, these are based on economic theory, maybe incorporating some behavioral finance. But generally speaking, most educators in finance and econ were very much against this highly non-parametric machine learning approach, which may not have a fundamental economic intuition behind it. We were always kind of saying, well, you don't have to have a intuitions, and as long as actually predict in the real world fairly well, then we're happy with it. And of course, nowadays, when you think about drug discoveries, when you think about medical devices, and in many cases, it's more about does it actually, how can they be applied in the real world or not? Then we come back to understand the more fundamental reasons behind it that will promote health developments. But I'll say it's just many advances are more from does it work in the real world? If it does, then we think about the more theoretical side of things. So the changes of direction, I think, participating and also encouraging people from the industry, of course, you have to spend a time, which in most times are either non-paid or probably very minimal compared to what you can earn in the industry. So do you have enough incentive to spend the time and work? And of course, from a college's perspective, is do you want to have the people from industry to participate? Again, many of them may or may not have the PhD degree. And again, if you focus on college rankings and how much or what's the percentage of your college faculties have a PhD degree, and again, may or may not help you. So have to be more open-minded. I think that's quite critical. So I'll just talk about more from this perspective, maybe come back on the recruiting side of things later on.
Others? Yeah, I just want to say that maybe different professions and different fields kind of approach this very differently. And in architecture, and I would assume maybe like law or medicine, education is very much integrated with practice. And so, therefore business. I come from the practice side, and if it wasn't because of my practice experience, I probably would not be invited to be the chair of the department. I think most department chairs in major universities who are chairing the Department of Architecture have a pretty prominent practice because you have to kind of integrate that experience in your education. And I think one of the models of classroom models as a typology of education is that in architecture school, we have what's called design studios. And design studios, they go from your first year to your last year, but the last year pretty much, I think all across the board, and I think this is a global phenomenon, you basically have to take on real projects, and many of them are supported by industries. And these are probably the most practical. I don't want to say successful because there are, fantasy kind of problems that are given by professors that are not related to real world solutions. That could also have very profound educational value. But the ones that are being sponsored by often global industries, they take students to a different culture. We go on field trips, we go to the site, we talk to the communities, community engagements to work on projects with communities to design urban projects or architecture projects. These turn out to be one of the most successful ones for students to really understand what it means to become a professional architect, and it prepares them that way. Other than just being in the classroom and being prepared by kind of theoretical discourses.
Thank you. Just to add to what's been shared, I think once we get into our field, we're in our field and the challenges come. And so we stay focused on our field. The partnership that should be happening tends to kind of come out of a necessity or kind of conversations afterwards. But if in fact we could initiate those conversations and have that partnership from the beginning, from the business side, from the education side, I think that will be much more fruitful. And yes, that's happening in some places, but even the terminology of research practice partnerships is relatively new within the last 10 years, where it's not just research and academia sort of doing what they do in a space and then going out into whether it's education spaces or business spaces and then happening in isolation, but more of a collaboration piece. So definitely extending that and doing that on the front end is really important.
I totally agree, the practical side for that, for art as a business and also for education side, combinations are perfect. So as a developer in New York City, right, we have the best source, right, for all that school here. For example, Columbia, NYU. NYU have a very good system for real estate school and also finance school. So when I go to a lot of the seminar panels like today, I see a lot of the NYU students come to hear that seminar from us, learn from the business leader. I think that is very good for that this kind of school. They open the door for the student, get them to have a source of access to the leading in the business side. And also, I know that from our company, we have one of the senior development manager, also the professor of one of that the school in locally, so that they can really able to bring that these business idea go into the school. That is fantastic for all the students able to really asking for a leading question to the professor and they're able to answer them, not only from the book and also from that practical on that daily life or daily job, So in another side, I see that, that the internship program for a lot of the students coming to work for that company like us is very helpful for the student. We always able to sign off some of the class, for example, the real estate class or financial class, the student NYU or Columbia come to our company for internship. And then for one semester, and then we give them some idea of that really business, in New York City, in the real estate side or financing side. They learn from us, and then we give them the credit. We sign off the class. That's a very good, for combined in the school in the business side. I think some of the school have been really good for that. Some not. Because I am that FWE committee member, I think we should, really consider have a more program like that in the business and the academic combined together.
Thanks for the insights on the essentials, right? Hand-on experience, very important, different sectors, different industries, and bridging gaps. So I have a question for our business leaders as we think about the workforce of the future. How does the rise of our interconnectedness affect the skills that you need and you expect from the next generation? Because the talent pool is more mobile. Resources can go beyond your immediate city. And the hottest conversation is it remote, hybrid? Oh my God, do we have to go back to the office? So as you think about the future talent pool, what are the skills that you think are so important? Because we have a lot of young people in the room. They've finished school or about to finish school or just starting, right? And every step builds on the next when we start our career, right? And we have the luxury, as we have years of experience, to maybe pivot. But when we start out, you need a couple of things. You need to go to maybe a good school, maybe to have a good network, or maybe so brilliant that you don't have to finish university and you can start your next shtick. And you don't need any advice and you can write the book. We like that too. But the reality is, very few of us are going to sit in our rooms, right? Because Gen Zs have all these aspirations, but they have to leave the room, the house, the computer. Somebody said they were born with telephones. I'm not sure if that's true, so that could be verified. But what skills do you need as you look at next few years? Because I think that's going to be the game changer. Somebody mentioned it's harder to find jobs. Which jobs are harder? Which are easier? Other people can argue those points. But as you look at running your businesses or your nonprofit or your institution, what are the skills that are most important as you going to manage your business? And where is it going to come from? Ian, please.
All right, I'm happy to take a crack of this question because as I mentioned earlier, I've been working in finance and education for nearly 30 years and work with 5 different banks and a few other organizations. And we recruiting students, we train them for so many years, and we definitely seeing some of these disconnects and hopefully offer some perspective on what might be lying ahead of us for the next couple of years. I think one of them is really interdisciplinary skills, right? So we, for example, recruiting students, and we find the if I generalize it, so for example, we hire students, a lot of students from IIT in India. That's what we're obviously looking for, the hardcore engineering skills. We recruit a lot of students from Tsinghua in China. This is where we find they have a very, again, hardcore, more of a science and math background, and we're mostly looking for business students. And again, students who are more like building relationships like sales and trading, for example, from mostly US colleges. And again, so we're definitely seeing the sort of a disconnects in between, for example, maybe you have this bias towards students from certain countries and with certain skills. But one thing we do find is it's very actually hard to find students with both strong technical skills and also interpersonal skills. And again, taking a very simple example is we have intern students from many US colleges and anywhere from freshmen to rising seniors. And I was shocked to know actually many of them either never learned the programming language or not, at least not sort of a comfortable working with the programming language. And again, I learned how to code when I was 6 and I was 1980. And I'm saying now it's 2024. There's no way you are not at least familiar with a basic language like a Python, which is very easy. It probably take you like a couple of days to get to the ground. It just, you really need to improve that skills. And the same thing is just when we hire the hardcore engineers from like IIT, for example, I was also equally shocked of how they are unable to write even a very basic business critical essays. And I have to spend so much time editing because in finance, again, it's very much of, yes, you need to have the hardcore skills, but on the other side, you have to communicate. I think it's very much true for almost any industry issues. You have to communicate ideas to your colleagues and to your clients and to your partners and many other. If you cannot communicate, and it doesn't really matter how great the products you have. And this is, again, also equally shocking. So I think this is sort of a very basic disconnects of what students either focus on one side or the other. And again, they can improve both sides of things. I think that would much better position for the next generations also. Small example.
I think our education system, both at the K-12 and higher ed level, focuses a lot on theory. Now, at Harvard, use the case method, which begins to integrate the theory and the practice, but it is within a lab scenario. It's not real life. And I think what I see in other countries that integrate learning theory and practice and do that early is a difference maker in terms of their value to the workforce in the future. An example of that is based on research is in those countries that have apprenticeship that starts while students are still in high school in the 11th grade or equivalent, that they're able to garner wages if they have both an apprenticeship, the practice, along with the theory, and a post-secondary degree will garner 30% more in wages than if they simply had a 4-year degree. So that's a signal that the market is saying, we need the theory, but if you don't know how to apply that theory in practice, you're less valuable. So that's one skill that's important, which is actual practice. When I hear young people going to get their master's directly out of a 4-year degree, it's like they don't have that experience. And so they're not able to apply it in the same way or absorb it in the same way. When I started my company, I was still in college. Actually, I am one of those dropouts. I started my company as part of a class project. But I could see, I would go to classes in the morning, and then I'd go to my business in the afternoon, and I could use my accounting class, or I could use my finance class. So that theory and practice, really important. Second, the youngest person on the previous panel, I think, talked about empathy. Working within any business, if you can't put yourself in your coworker's place, if you can't see it from their perspective, if you're working with businesses or partners outside of your home country and you can't understand their culture or don't take the time to understand it, have empathy for their challenges, then I think that's another area of opportunity as well as weakness.
I like to add something to that. And I would say, because I come from the creative industry and probably the only one here, one skill that I find that is quite lacking in a lot of youngsters today, and that we really need, I think beyond the creative industry, is conceptual thinking. And this is somewhat related to the theoretical kind of thinking that you're talking about, but still different. So what I'm saying is, you know, we're trying to design something, and I'm teaching a class how to design, and sometimes you need to give examples, but often a student who doesn't have the kind of conceptual thinking framework, they will take examples literally. And I think to be able to go beyond the literal, to be able to expand and open up your mind and your brain and your problem solving kind of way of thinking, to expand, taking one example and expand it to many others through conceptual thinking, I think that's a really key kind of skill set. And I think that also can be expanded to interpersonal skill and also interdisciplinary skill, so that you're not thinking within the box, but you can take whatever experience that you've had or anything that you learn and expand it to and be applied to other things.
I think I can give some advice for the younger student. You know, every year my company hire at least about 3 to 4 young students just graduate from different major. I found out a lot of the Ivy League school student, or it doesn't matter which school come from, after they graduate, they think about they're gonna stop there. For my advice, that continued study is very important for the young adult today. You know, so because the book from the school is not really, sometimes not really able to connect to the job doing every day. After you graduate from school, you should continue to have a job and have some continued education. There's so many classes, you know, in today in the internet, so helpful for our daily job. I give you a perfect example. You know, everybody know that today digital marketing so important, right? So when we doing that marketing for our company, I have my sales manager go online to study from Columbia called digital marketing class. Take about 3 months, every day about 2 hours. You know, just a very good class, right? It's not paid that much. The key point is that, you know, they can able continue to learning from the update technology today, so it can help the company help themselves. You know, so that's a one sample. And any sample, I think that it should be very humble for today, whether young adult, when they after they graduate, you know, because after they started from the book, anything they think, like that Dean said, is inside the box. They're not always think outside the box. They're always using some rule or something reserved from the internet and tell the boss or tell the supervisor, hey, this the internet say, this is the book say. They, you know, because they're not really practical in the job field. So what they can able to refer from is from internet, from the book, right? They're not really practically, you know, working. Yes. right? Not only for that, now for us as a business leader, for us, in order we able to lead the good team. So for us, we should think about ourselves. How can we able to continue education for ourselves to improve our knowledge also? Because today technology improves so fast. If we as a boss, we have a leader, if we not able to update ourselves, improve ourselves, how can we able to understanding that what the young adult thinking about? So for example, myself, I am in that doctor degree today for at the school called United Business Institution from Brussels, in the doctor degree program of business administration. So that took me for a long time to think about, should I in this program or not as a business leader? But I think about if I'm not, how can I influence for my executive team in my company? And how can I able to learn the update technology from today, able to collaborate with my executive or in the senior team in the company or some young adult, they just graduate from school. So for me, it's important, not only I want to advise some of that young adult, continue learn for themselves, also for ourselves also. Thank you.
Thanks. Lifelong students, right? Lifelong learning, important problem solving, right? We have to continually solve, have empathy, lead in this case. Are there ways business could work with academic institutions to influence better outcomes? It's a big statement, big ask. Are there things that you can do? As business leaders, you can hire interns, you can give experiences across different industries to up and coming talent and leaders. But can business do more? Can business be more involved in helping us train future leaders? Or is that such a lofty goal? Because we know government, right? At the end of the day, the job of a government is to facilitate. Some governments do a good job, others do less, right? Do less. And role of business is to give us a decent job, decent pay, so we can buy food and shelter. Just fundamental. What else could business do to help influence educational systems? Is there any thought? You're all running interesting experiments, but are there short wins? Because my city of Boston needs a lot of help, but we can't seem to do more than just talk about it. So no, we probably need CareerWise and other entities to come in, because a number of dropouts in high school is super high in the city. And the future doesn't look good. What can we do to support these systems?
Well, your question is, are there short wins? And I would tell you there aren't. And the reason I say that is nothing that can be transformational happens quickly. Historically, we view whether it's K-12 or higher ed as being the place where learning takes place. The reality of it is, most of us, I know in my own experience, I learned more working than I did in the classroom. When I put the two together, that learning became very powerful. So what can businesses do? We hosted Jamie Dimon, the chairman of JP Morgan Chase, at one of our apprenticeship sites, insurance company with over 600 employees that had 5% of their workforce as high school apprentices. They started in the 11th grade in coding, underwriting, finance, accounting, a whole host of different occupations within this company. And Jamie spent about 3 hours meeting with young people and hearing about the experience they had on the job and what they were learning. And later that evening, he had a gathering of private client customers at JP Morgan, about 200 and some. And he made the comment after describing his experience watching the classroom in a business with practical real learning and paid apprenticeships for young people. He made the comment that if each of us in this room as business leaders would take 5% of our workforce as apprentices, we change this country. That's a powerful statement because he is connecting that theory and practice, and more importantly, the role that JP Morgan has in building future talent. What's unique to Jamie is he went back to New York. He invited us to create an affiliate here, which we did. We now have CareerWise New York, and JP Morgan has now hired over 100 apprentices in various roles from coding to bankers within JP Morgan Chase. Amazon in their device divisions has hired over 150 apprentices here. So what we can do today, if you want a short win, is hire a young person, create that bridge between high school and career, which can and should, when appropriate, include post-secondary braided together. But that's a way you can do it. And so what's the result? And we've just been in New York for 5 years, so some of our apprentices are just now graduating out of 3 years. One of them, his name is Chris Gates, just spoke at a national summit last week. Chris was working for MasterCard, spent 3 years in digital marketing at MasterCard. He completed his apprenticeship 4 weeks ago. He was just hired 2 weeks ago at MasterCard. He's earning over $90,000. Now, he is a young Black man who didn't have opportunity handed to him, but through his hard work, getting up at 6 in the morning, going to school, going to his apprenticeship, he now is able to pay his mom's mortgage. So when you talk about opportunity and access, here you have a young man who is really headed for the stars. But as he said, if I hadn't had this opportunity, if that classroom didn't exist within MasterCard, I don't know where I would be.
Just to give you an example, as I think about that question and how the business piece can help, a couple of years ago, actually in 2022, someone had reached out to me, a philanthropist. He helped to found and start a school, but they realized their 4th and 5th grade learners were far below where they needed to be in terms of their reading levels. And I believe when the business piece kicks in, as long as it is a good partnership, it does alleviate a lot of the bureaucratic tape and all of the obstacles that one has to go through to provide a high quality education. And so just for example of what was done in the reading lab that we helped establish at the time, only 42% of those readers were reading at or above grade level. And I said to him, I was like, all right, Steve, we have 4.5 months. The goal is that everyone is going to be at or above grade level. And he looked at me like, what? Like, how is that possible? And so part of that is, I believe 100% is the passion and also knowing and understanding. But the partnership piece came in when, for him, it wasn't a PO I had to put through or a request or a board approval. But Steve was just like, whatever you need, Lynette. And so we opened up a Reading Lab pop-up store as they were going through their levels and helping one another to be Reading Lab champions, championing other readers to get where they need to be. Once a month, we opened this Reading Lab pop-up store with books and just other things for them. They had a Reading Lab debit card, which was really just card stock and the numbers that spelled out reading is fun. But they were able to earn money through that. In the end of that 4.5 months, I'm just pleased to say that 96% of our readers were not just at grade level, but reading 1 to 2 years above grade level. And so, yes, there is a lot of money already in education, a lot of money, people are not taking advantage of those opportunities and there are missed opportunities, but definitely for that experience, that partnership with a business philanthropist and an educator who is just passionate about doing what is good and right for children, transformation can happen, and fortunately for us in a very quick time, and that spilled over to the parents. So looking at how they were able to earn money for their families who helped to pay the after school program, it can benefit. And so my hope is similar to what was just shared, is that we can have more of those conversations and people can really see where they can help fill that need, so that the partnerships then have a profound impact on communities.
You good?
Yeah, sure. I'll just add one more thing is I'll give you two examples. One example probably work favorably, the other one probably not so much. Right, so the first one is more in the K-12 experience. And again, both my daughters go to one of the best public high schools. And if I look at the math curriculum, and again, I was shocked to see that was exactly the same as what it was designed in the 1980s and hasn't really changed a bit. And again, when we do the same thing, look at other high schools, and because when we work with a couple of colleges, then we find there is a fundamental lacking of, for example, not only just the education, but also even just broad interest of data science. So in that experience is my partner, business partner, Ed Wolf, and his wife and my family, we decided to sponsor this data science competition at Wharton, at Penn. And again, that's raise awareness, and idea was any high school anywhere in the world can participate. And I think that was work out, this is the second year, so work out in a very positive way. So we definitely raising awareness. The other thing I think it hasn't really done so well is probably taking Europe as example. We work with many clients and we work with many colleges and educators, and there was a fundamental lacking of talents in Europe, as we all know about AI, right? So the joke on the Financial Times was, if you think about US and China has all the AIs and no regulations. In Europe, you have no AI companies, you have all the regulations, right? So that's kind of the joke is you cannot find the basic talents anywhere from colleges, undergraduate to graduate to PhD, just very much limited. And almost all dominated by two countries. Actually, to some extent, Canada also played very well in this game, but there's a significant disconnect. And I don't see that's going to change anytime soon because the education system in Europe has done very well in many aspects, but in this side of things, I think they're just fundamentally lacking. And there's no any mechanism to see any changes anytime soon.
So as a business leader, for me, I already do I give a sample for myself. I'm 25 years ago, I'm also an architecture student, right? At that moment. So our professor don't have so many come out from that practically in the architect or designer for some of the company, right? So we just, basically what they're teaching us from the book, basically. But I think for today, I think it's different. I already told everybody, I have one of executive development managers, always a part of professor from Passion Design School. So one day I talked to him, said, because, how you teaching the student? So because you already working for the field for 15 years, so I share my experience from when I am an architect student. I said, if you're teaching in the school, you should pick one of our project, right? As a design sample, let them to design it. At the same time, because we are the hire some very famous, designer doing our project. At the same time, parallel, let them do the job from the student. At the same time, show them what the master do, right? So compare, show to them. But because before, when I am an architect student, I design something, I'm not sure that's a practical use for or not. I just become a piece of empty homework. But if you show them a true project, that the designer student design something compares the master, to at the same time, they can able to see, wow, what the level I am or what the level is a true project complete. That's going to be a totally different experience for some of the students, right? So I think that's one we can do as a business leader, and also that should be for all that the university or the college that open the door for more of the professional I think for this executive in different field to enter the school and teaching in the school, right? That can be more practical idea.
I think no.
No, I was just going to ask Bentley, would you like to support one of the design studios at UPenn next semester?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Everyone heard, right?
So I've shared a lot about the student experience and why blending that theory and practice makes sense. There's another compelling reason, though, why business should do this and do this now, and that has to do with the bottom line. And I'll give you two examples. The first is from a meeting I had earlier this week with Bloomberg LP, just down here in New York, where they were talking about the apprenticeship program. It was a business review going over the progress that their apprentices had been making in their various occupations at Bloomberg. And they shared their decision that they were going to, or they had allowed the students to take 2 weeks off for a summer break, like their other high school contemporaries. But by the second day, the supervisors started calling the HR department saying, well, who's going to do their work? So what that meant is this is not an internship in a high school type internship. This is more equivalent to a college internship where they're doing real work. So Bloomberg is paying an apprenticeship wage, which is typically around $20 to $25 now in the city. And they're taking some of the work that is done by people that are making double to triple that. And that's a learning experience for them. So it's good for the apprentice and good for the bottom line of Bloomberg. The second example I'll give you is with my own company, Intertech Plastics. We brought in 11th graders who had an interest in manufacturing and automation. Today's manufacturing plant typically is just like a big computer. And these young people are digital natives. They walked into our facility. One of them, Kevin King, a young Black man, is a genius. And he dug into building automation cells that enabled us to bring product back from overseas because we could compete. And he's done that time and time again. So what does that mean in terms of the ROI for the business? Certainly, we're able to bring more business back, do that domestically, do it competitively, and increase our bottom line. 2 years ago, when I sold the company, I could measure the value in earnings that those apprentices contributed to. And because our company sold on a multiple of earnings, I could take that slice of those projects and determine what that value was to the transaction. And it was in the 7 figures. So the reality of it is, this type of learning, when applied, has a bottom line for the young person as well as the business. And that's why in other countries, they do it. It's not just to build, and we need to, opportunities for our young people. It's because it's good for business. We live in a global economy. It's not one versus the other because we all need each other. I believe we need open trade between our countries, and I think that benefits all of us. But to be successful at it, you have to have a trained workforce. And frankly, I can say this because I'm born here. I think the US is falling behind because our education system is not aligned. It is not working together. And as a result, there's inefficiency built into our economy that we are not measuring. And for those countries that do this well, they compete globally, even if they're not the low-cost producer, because frankly, if you produce the highest quality, you don't have to be the lowest cost producer. So an education system that is in sync, that doesn't operate in silos, that works together, has great value.
So as we think about the future, if we could dare, what do you foresee? As we look at the next few years out, we know that I think a number of us have studied abroad. Others have studied here. Education is a game changer. But as you look into the future of international education and the next generation of leaders we aspire to develop, do you want to predict any trends? Today's, I think, the 28th. Do you want to predict any trends? Be bold. I know everything's about AI and all this cool stuff, but do you want to just put your neck out there and say, Ani, this is what I see coming down the road? Big, bold. I like big bets. I like small bets, but small wins build momentum. We know we need industry. We have to work with business. That's Dr. Davis's dream, that collaborate with business, improve education, enable the youth, and bring more harmonious opportunities to the next generation. If you were to make any big bets, I'm going to ask each of you, what would that be? Is it beyond AI? I hope so, because I still want to be human myself, but could you all jump in on that? And then we're going to open it up. So if you're sitting in the audience and you're falling asleep quietly, I'm going to cold call people to ask questions. Okay. So get ready. Anybody? Future? Ian? Don't just say AI.
I try. All right, I'll start from AI. I'll start from, I don't know if it's bold statements or prediction or not, but I think kind of two trends I kind of seeing what is really, again, going back to my earlier comments on interdisciplinary. I really think is in the future, students will have to have the skills of in multiple disciplines. You need to have the sort of a more technical skills. You also need to have interpersonal skills, but more importantly, we need creativity, which hopefully is something that AI cannot replace anytime soon. So that's one. The second, again, I don't know, is it both statements, but I really think is going global from educational perspective, at least multicultural and multiple different countries and continents, and would be highly valuable because the future I really think business are really competing on a global scale. Again, maybe because my bias in finances, almost everything you're competing with providers and with other banks and with other asset management firms, almost everything is on a global scale. Again, have a very different cultures, different specialties, and I mentioned earlier from students to practitioners. And I really think having the experience, having the background, having the educations from multiple countries and cultures would be a huge advantage. And again, from my own personal perspective, I encourage my kids to, again, go and study abroad and again, trying to gain experience from different languages as well.
Others?
I'm actually gonna tell a short story more about the history and to frame the time that we're in right now. So if you go back 100 years ago, today would be their future, right? So 100 years ago, a couple came to UPenn from China on a ship because they didn't fly back then to study architecture. The woman came with her husband. Both of them wanted to study architecture. She took all the courses in architecture, did just as well as the men, but she was not able to graduate with an architecture diploma because at that time, Penn did not offer architecture degree to a woman. The couple, after they graduated, they went back to China and basically established an entire discipline of modern architecture in China. She became one of the forerunners of preserving Chinese ancient wood architecture, archived and did like an entire archival of the most important historic architecture in China. She is a household name, Lin Huiying. I think everyone knows who she is. 100 years later, so last May, the dean of the architecture school gave her granddaughter a posthumous diploma. I was on stage, and I'm a Chinese woman sitting on stage representing the Department of Architecture, and I am now the chair. So what I'm trying to say is we are their future. And 100 years later, I don't know what that means, but if I'm going to be bold, technology does do some good, I think, even though we're all, I think, are really in fear of what AI is going to bring to the world in the future. But I'm thinking Uber, Airbnb would not happen without technology, and maybe education. There's going to be like Uber and Airbnb, they're successful because they're able to make connections between things that traditionally were not connected, and therefore becomes huge business. And I think Facebook as well. So if education can take on the kind of connectivity between people between time, between place, between culture, between ideology, political stance. I think for me, that would be an ideal future.
Thank you. All right, as I think about, all right, here we go. That's a lot of pressure, but all right, here we go. So as I think about the question you just posed, I think about John Dewey, who once said that education is not preparation for life, but education is life itself. And even as we are in this space now, just thinking about the partnerships that will exist between our businesses and education, truly having that global perspective and lens that will ensure that every child in our world will be exposed to a world-class education, which means I can only imagine what the businesses and the roles will look like, but it is with these continued conversations and the partnerships that will ensure that we all are recipients, generations to come, of that world-class experience. Thank you.
When you suggested that we be bold, I was really debating on whether or not I would be bold. Because as we all know, in this country, the US is on the precipice of an election. It is clear that the country is divided. And when you look to the core, you can blame it on politics. That's a symptom. But when countries divide against each other sometimes, why do they do it? There's a great book written by Jim Clifton, who's the founder of Gallup. And he did a study across the world as to what the world wants. And the answer, whether you were in China or in India, South Africa, the United States, is what people want is a good job. And they want access to it. They want the ability to put a roof over their head, a car in their garage. And if their children want that, an education that takes them all the way through a PhD. When they don't have that, they tend to point fingers at someone else. And so education and opportunity, to me, unlocks our future. That is very bright because we have tools. I do love AI because it accelerates learning if you use it well. It democratizes jobs because you can use that in your job to be more efficient with your job. And I see it with apprentices today that are using it to learn their job and then to execute their work. So the future can be bright, but it is dependent on our ability in business and in education to ensure that everyone in our countries across this globe actually do have a future, do have opportunity, and have the tools that they need to contribute and build a future for their families. So I'm optimistic. I wouldn't be truthful if I didn't say I was also quite worried. Hopefully by the new year that the dawn will have broken and we will see the future.
I've been informed by Angel that I don't have much more airtime here, but I do need to thank, and I need your help, each one of our panelists, because it really, really has gotten me excited about the possibilities for FWE, the role that we can play, the role all of you can play. And I'm so grateful all of you flew, took Uber, however, whatever you did to get here. Could we please say thank you to the awesome panelists? And we'll step down. We don't have time. We're gonna have to go informal questions because they need the stage.
I know all of you guys must want to learn more from these great academics and entrepreneurs here. So, well, please, thank you so much. We appreciate all your wonderful input. And I'm sorry that you didn't get to experience our wonderful, cold call opportunity here that Anya was gonna have. Because in HBS, often they just do cold call, just pick up someone and then we'll be asking the questions. I'm sorry you didn't get to experience Arnie's HBS atmosphere today, but you will get a chance to when you join the next FWE event that's coming up. So without further ado, I will quickly introduce two young leaders here to share a brief project that they are working on, and then I'll be welcoming our closing keynote speaker. So please, two young leaders to join us with your quick introduction of your project.
Thank you, Angel. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Kathy, and I'm a junior high school student. I'm here today with my partner, Andre, to introduce you guys to a project we're going to start. First, I would like to thank Dr. Davis for giving us this wonderful opportunity to stand up here and lead this project. This project is going to be foster debate among young leaders and gather everyone to share different ideas and thoughts on different topics.
Yeah, I would just once again like to reiterate, thank you so much to Dr. Davis for this opportunity, for the ability to lead this project. It's hard speaking after the immensely important and of great magnitude conversation that preceded us. But just to get into specifics, the meetings will probably be monthly. They will discuss the topics of education, social issues, economic issues, and political issues, and we'll meet to look for these solutions to these issues. And solutions is the key word because it is a space designed to find solutions and new angles from young leaders and to promote problem solving in young leaders.
Thank you, Andre. If you guys are interested in it, please reach out to either Ting Ting or Ethan or even us later after the 30-minute break. And then we could gather up in maybe starting next month, maybe over here at Penn Club. That is to be decided. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I'm not a high school student because they are so over accomplished at this age, you know. I feel so much pressure from the younger generation, but that's a good thing because we're all moving ahead and moving forward. So now please allow me to introduce our closing keynote. She's such a amazing, you know, a person, a professional in the education sector. She was the Assistant Secretary for Education at the Department of Education, and she is the Vice President of FWE. She has done so much for education sector that she is the perfect person for the closing speech. You know, I just want to add a little part that, you know, we had a quick conversation before they start, and I asked her how was it like to be the Assistant Secretary General of Education, and she said Angel is actually a diplomatic work. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Susan Scafani.
I'm delighted to be here. Every time we bring together a group of young leaders, we have the opportunity to see the future. And this future is very bright. When you get to know these young people and the ideas that they have, the commitment that they have to working together, and they come from all over, from different countries, from different areas of interest and study, but they're all committed to the same thing, making sure that their countries are better in the future through collaboration and problem solving than they were in the past. And that, to me, is a very exciting thing. And I think we should give all of our young leaders a round of applause. In addition, we've had an opportunity to listen to people who have experiences, who have been in business, who have gone through an education process at a different point in time than today. And they can talk about both the pluses and the minuses of having done that. I think that FWE was started because we recognized that unless we brought the business community together with educators, we were not going to ensure that young people have the opportunities that will prepare them to create this better future that we want for our world. And so listening to each of them speak brought back to us the need to transform our education systems, just as technology and global travel and experience has transformed our world. And as each of them talked, I thought about things that we have tried in the past, things that we have focused on in the past that would enable us to be successful. Clearly, there are good programs, but as Yin points out, whenever I see him, his children attend one of the best, noted as one of the best school systems in America. And yet, the focus is on the same kind of education that we had in the 1980s. And the world has changed dramatically since the 1980s. So how do we allow our business leaders to talk with our educators and bring their experiences, bring the opportunities that they're making available to their young employees, available to students across our country and across the world? I think that when we listen to that, and I'm certainly going to talk to Noel about career-wise, because I was assistant secretary for vocational and adult education, an area that has been neglected in this country for many, many years. We kind of went through a period where we taught kids to work with their hands. And then technology and automation came in, and we did not change dramatically what we were doing in those programs. They were only of interest to those that we designated as, oh, you're not college bound. You're not college quality. When, as he's discovered and as others have discovered with the interns that they work with, these are smart young people. They may not have excelled in the style of education that we offered them, but give them opportunities and they will excel and they will transform our world. So I think that as we're looking forward to the work of the Forum for World Education, we see that our business communities and our young leaders are the avenue to improving the quality of education that is available to every child. We have wonderfully educated young people in this room, and they're willing to work together, as we just heard, to figure out, how do we make this opportunity available to our peers? How do we ensure that we are not just the selected top 10%, which is what it was back in the 19th century, where we looked at the talented 10th in the Black community and assumed that none of the rest of them were worth educating. We're still doing that, but across ethnic groups. We're still focusing on the very top performing students. And they're top performing because they've got parents in many cases who have given them experiences and opportunities that enable them to be successful. But we need to recognize that that 90% is just as smart. They may not learn the same way. They may not have exactly the same interests, and they certainly haven't had the experiences that many of the young people that we've heard from and have met today have had. But they're capable of it. Just as Noel pointed out, the student who came in and transformed a system that they were designing. Not because he had been to the best school, but because he was smart and this was of interest to him. And we sometimes forget in education that student interest is an absolutely critical component. You cannot teach students who are not interested. And we cannot teach in ways that only interest a small percentage of our students. So we've got a lot of work to do in education. I think it's not just true in our country. It is true in other countries as well. But I know that the focus that Cheng and I have is on bringing examples of other countries doing things well to our country here in the United States, so that we can achieve a higher level of success for all of our students. As we look, as was just mentioned, as we look to the future, we see that there is an opportunity to bring together a government that is focused on all of the people and that will enable people like you to work together to make sure that we have the success here that is possible. But it'll only happen if we continue to work together. It'll only happen if each of you makes a commitment to reach back to your peers who haven't had that chance and make sure they have opportunities like yours, to share with them the excitement that you have about what you're learning so that they can see that there is another world out there beyond perhaps what the rote learning in their classroom looks like. It is a critical time. And as we look at the world, what we see is that many of the tensions that exist in the world exist between the haves and the have-nots. And I think, as Dr. Kanan talked about at the very beginning of this program, if we develop our girls and our women as equal partners in the enterprise of running their countries, of creating opportunities, we will change the world. If we only see them as second-class citizens, if we only think that they're there to have children and not recognize that they are raising the next generation of leaders, then we make a big mistake. And it's, as I said, just wonderful to be here with this group that recognizes the importance of going beyond what has been, beyond what is now, to create this future where all children, rich, poor, ethnic, diverse students of all kinds, are given the opportunities to be excited by their learning and to move forward in a way that not only enriches them, but enriches their family, enriches their younger siblings, enriches their communities, and therefore enriches their country. So that is my hope for all of you. And Andres and Cynthia here are going to have to, Cheryl, I'm sorry, focus on that as they bring young people together to say, how can we address these problems? Some people think we're too young to do it, but those of us who understand how change happens know that these young people are the wave that's going to move the future forward. And the better organized they are, the more they're able to talk, not just with one another, but with leaders from all areas, the better prepared they'll be to lead us forward. And, you know, whether we're talking about the Bible that said the children will lead thee, or we're talking about the fact that we have seen examples of that throughout this room. We know that our young people are not just our future, they're our present, and their actions in the present will create the future that we all want. So we appreciate so much your being here. We appreciate the panel. Again, a diverse group of people who have had different life experiences, and through those life experiences and their education, understand the world in a way that most people have not had the opportunity to do. So we thank our first panel as well as our second panel. We thank our young people for planning to change the future, one young person at a time, getting them into groups, getting their ideas and their thoughts, and ensuring that what they do makes a difference in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. I think that was such a touching and a perfect summarize for whatever we have discussed today. It is a looking forward and a way forward. And just as she said, one young person at a time, and together we build a future that's, you know, sustainable and looking forward positively for us in the future. So thank you all. As you know, as a tradition for FWE, we don't end anything without a photograph. So I'm gonna have all of you to turn around, to have the photographer to take a photo of a group audience. So actually, the photographer is coming here. So please, everyone, stay where you are. We're gonna take a group photo to memorize our perfect day of Forum for World Education. We thank again for the sponsorship of Bentley, his New Empire Group, that will make this happen today. So please, everyone, the young leaders, the panelists, join the front so we take a photo. We couldn't see you. That's too on the angle. Join. Join in the middle, please. We take a group photo together, and I'm going to invite panelists to come up and to take a panelist photo as well. Don't be shy. Just stand here, it's fine as well. Just join. Yes, please come up.
Connecting the middle also works.
可以看到他们吗？
To the front.
对，马上
可以看得到。Come to join us in the photo. Thank you. 可以吗？能照到吗？
边上的看得到吗？